Okay, so now we are going to cross, let's see, I guess we would be crossing from, to get to Sydney to New Delhi. How would we do that? Would we cross the Indian Ocean, or am I getting the wrong ocean?
No, you got it. Okay.
We're going to cross the Indian Ocean, and we're going to move to our friend Abhijit Chanda in India, who is, I think of him as my Indian counterpart, much like I was talking about Richard as my Australian counterpart. There he is. Hey.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, sir?
Pretty good, actually. I'm just ready and waiting, and so excited to be on here actually today, and very glad to see the 13th birthday of Skeptoid, which has been very crucial in my journey into skepticism.
You have made many kind comments about Skeptoid over the years, and I appreciate that very much.
Oh, it's all. Trust me, it's all absolutely well warranted. You have done a tremendous amount of work promoting this, and the reason I really appreciate your format is because it's so quick. It's easy to get into. It's like a nice 15-minute deep dive into whatever topic you're talking about, and at the end of it, you come out with a pretty good idea of where the facts lie. So that has inspired me quite a bit too, actually.
Now we met. Was the first time we met at a SciCon in Las Vegas?
Yeah. That was last year.
Last year or 2 years ago?
Last year.
Okay. And I know that you do a podcast in India, but I have not heard it.
Yeah.
Is it in English or is it in Tamil or what is it in? I have no idea.
It is in English. I'm not really good at many of the vernacular languages.
Okay.
But I am. But yeah, it's in English. It's on a similar format to yours because being a one-man. Well, I wouldn't call myself an army, but being the only guy on this job, it's really convenient to first write a blog, which is my primary skill of writing, and then putting it out there, just recording that as a transcript for a podcast and just putting it up. So it's very convenient, it's quick, it's easy. I haven't managed to be as regular as I had hoped when I started off, but I'm working on it. I think in the next few months, I think things should be a lot more solid than they have been.
It sounds exactly like how I was getting started. The decision to make the show a short format and a single subject. It doesn't talk about what I've been up to this week and this and that happened and this was in the news. And now let's talk about homeopathy for a minute. It's the whole show is just one subject. And the decision to do that was based on, number one, it was less work, and I didn't have a lot of time available. So if you just focus on just the content and nothing else, that's, it's less work, it's more efficient. And the other reason was I just thought it was a better format to listen to. You're not throwing anything other than just the most desired content to the listeners.
Absolutely. It's really important to kind of just, because these days people's attention spans are really short and you need to kind of get in there, get the facts out as quickly as possible and as effectively as possible, and as accurately, considering we're skeptics.
Right.
So, and fortunately it's been well received. It's still a very small podcast. I don't think I have many downloads yet. But hopefully, as I become more regular and more consistent, things will kind of pick up a little bit more, and hopefully, I'll see a lot more interaction on that.
And so you're writing the transcripts, and the transcripts are on the web as a blog, right?
Yeah, that's on my website at berationable.com.
Berationable, yeah. I found that when I started doing that. It had an unintended advantage, and that was the website. Google loved the website because the website consisted of nothing but original articles that were, Google loves original articles, actual, real, original writing, not copied from a book, not copied from pasted from other places, but original content that's well written. Their algorithms are good enough that they can detect well written content from just keyword spammy content. So I've had tremendous Google ranking for every subject I've ever done, and that was something that I never intended. It just kind of was a side effect, and it sounds like you're gonna receive the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I've already actually had a pretty decent number of hits from just Google searches, and surprisingly, there was, I think, one of my most popular articles was about a WhatsApp forward that was coming through saying that Japan is going to get rid of all of its microwave ovens. And because when I started researching that forward, only that section was covered by websites like Snopes and a few others like I don't remember, Hoax Watch or something to that effect. But the thing is that message was actually a lot longer, and they had over at least 20 to 30 claims which were listed below it, talking about foods that harm you, foods that heal you, foods that get damaged if you microwave them or do something else to them, and all sorts of hoaxy stuff. So some of the stuff was true, some not so much, and others were absolute crap. So I went through.
Uh-oh. We froze.
Did a little bit of a micro research on each one of them, and in one small paragraph gave an overall gist of whether it was yes, no, or maybe. And that has actually, a lot of hits have come though. I think a lot of people have been seeing that WhatsApp message and have been trying to figure out if it's true or not. And I was very pleasantly surprised to see a good response on that one.
So is this? I don't use WhatsApp. So is this just something that it just came through as like a spam marketing message or something? To a lot of users?
WhatsApp is tremendously popular in India. I mean, if you don't have WhatsApp, you're pretty much out of the loop. You're not in the in crowd. Okay. And there is, and you have family members, you have friends who are on there sending you all sorts of WhatsApp forwards, like Facebook forwards used to be, right? Like Facebook shares, people just sharing all sorts of nonsense on Facebook. That's what WhatsApp is now, except it's a hell of a lot harder to regulate. So we've had not only pseudoscientific messages about alternative medicine, about such things like Japan's microwave ovens, and but it's got a ton of other stuff. You have people's pictures, propaganda, political propaganda being shared on WhatsApp. You have people being cited as pedophiles or rapists or something of that sort, and completely falsely accused. This is just mob mentality, where people have noticed somebody they saw on WhatsApp who has been accused of being a rapist or something of that sort, and they just go out in a mob and beat the crap out of them, or at times have even killed them, just based on a WhatsApp forward without verifying anything, without reporting anything to the police, nothing of that sort. It is probably one of the most dangerous communication tools and one of the most effective communication tools we have right now. In fact, the anti-vaccine movement has been filtering into India through WhatsApp forwards from abroad. So there have been cases where people have started becoming anti-vax in India purely based on WhatsApp forwards from around the world. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's huge. I mean, many times people have said, "Hey, you should do an episode about, this meme on Facebook or something like that," and I never do them because the main reason I don't do stuff like that is because I don't cover any current events. I only cover subjects that have already been out there for a few years, that have been proven to have legs, that have been proven to be something, that's a kind of a rock in popular culture that's false. It's not something that's here this week and people are going to forget all about it next week. And that one nice thing about that is that it lets me avoid all the kinds of subjects you're talking about. I mean, if you tried to address all of those, you'd be underwater. I mean, there's no way you can keep up with it all.
Yeah, there have been times when I've felt like, there's just too much. It's like a log jam in your head. You're like, what are you going to talk about this week? I mean, there's 50 different things that need to be attacked. But the reason why I want to attack these and why I want to be a voice against them or just be a resource where people can get it, because there is so much pseudoscience and alternative medicine tropes and stuff like that being spread on these formats. And this is a very important reason why people are consuming this kind of, and this is changing people's minds. This is bringing people to think about, these pseudoscientific ideas as fact. In fact, have you heard about the whole thing about vitamin B17?
I've heard a lot of things about vitamin B, whatever. Which one are you thinking of?
Yeah. No, so this vitamin B17, there's been a lot of stuff which has been shared by, I think, Kent Hovind and Natural News and, pages like that, which basically say that cancer is just a deficiency of vitamin B17, which is actually called amygdalin, which is in seeds of, apricot kernels, apple seeds, seeds of quite a variety of fruits. And if you eat them, they form cyanide in your body. They are metabolized into cyanide. And if you have enough of it, it could make you seriously unwell or kill you, which is a very good cure for cancer. But not the way you want it to be, right? So I saw one of these videos on my WhatsApp. I got one of these videos on WhatsApp, and it just blew my mind that people were sharing this sort of stuff. Stuff that could actually, like, we learned in high school that eating apple seeds was poisonous. And all of a sudden you get a WhatsApp message saying this can cure cancer, and it's just mind-blowing. I can't get my head around it. So I've written like 2 articles on just purely vitamin B17 and what it does to you, and why you should not take it as a cancer cure at all.
Wow.
It's really strange.
One of the main things I wanted to ask you about today was, what are the kinds of topics that you're seeing in your part of the world? And I mean, you've already answered that. And it's not too different from the kinds of things that we're seeing in this part of the world, and all because of these social media apps that, it eliminates the borders all around the world, and a message spreads everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah. It seems to be by language, though. I mean, most everyone in India speaks English, right?
Mostly, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, most educated people, yeah, at some level or the other.
Yeah, so the same kind of things that we'll see on Facebook, you might see on WhatsApp. They just get shared around and around and around everywhere with the same language, flows around the planet like a river, and I'm sure, I think Mandarin Chinese is obviously, that's the biggest population of non-English speakers. And I think the second biggest population of non-English speakers is Spanish. So South America.
Oh.
There's a lot of Spanish speakers that don't know English, and I think Russian is after that. But I think all of these communities probably have their own separate, insulated versions of woo and pseudoscience and fake news and all of that stuff.
Yeah, in fact, and it doesn't stop anybody from translating something into the vernacular and just sharing that instead. I mean, I've seen that as well.
Yeah, sure.
But I think the most important topics, the most dangerous, I wouldn't say dangerous, but the most popular pseudoscientific ideas that are going around these days, especially in India, has to do with health and medicine, which is why I end up writing a lot more about that than anything else. And I've always loved biology, and I liked it in school and never could have the maths jobs to really pursue science, but that's why I became a writer. But the most important thing is, of course, homeopathy is massive in India. It is, it came in very soon after it was introduced in Germany. There were German doctors and homeopaths who had come to India through West Bengal, who had brought it in. There were Christian missionaries which brought it into Kerala and the south, and it's been there ever since the British rule and has stayed on ever since as a relatively cheap form of medicine, if you can call it that.
Right.
But it has now taken, I think most of the Indian population kind of takes it for granted that homeopathy works. And many have taken it to a point where it connects to Ayurveda, which is the traditional Indian form of medicine, which has been passed down for thousands of years, and which people adhere to almost religiously. And people just take it for granted that it's scientific, and that it also works. Just taken for granted that it works. But of course, some of these products would work. There are a few things like ashwagandha, which has some preliminary evidence that it seems to be effective in some places. I forget what exact conditions, but things like turmeric, which is now going all over the world. Everybody's crazy about turmeric all of a sudden. You got to put it in your lattes, you got to put it in your pudding, you got to put it in your eye drops. It's crazy. And that all stems from Ayurveda. So somehow people have taken these two major forms of alternative medicine and somehow managed to stitch them together and say that homeopathy works in similar ways to Ayurveda, which is obviously, there's absolutely no similarity. Homeopathy was made in the 1700s by a German. It's got absolutely no connection. But people still tie them together to justify their use of it. So at least I give Ayurveda some sort of credit that it actually has something in it. There are active ingredients, but it's just that most of it, because it's such a vast subject, you can't just, there isn't no central principles other than natural healing that you can apply to any one remedy. So each one has to be selected. Each one has to have clinical trials to see if they work or not. And until then, we don't know what effects, non-effects, or side effects that any of them would have. Homeopathy is very easy that way. It's
no side
water
effects.
and sugar pills.
So if you're out with friends, say you're out with a bunch of friends at dinner or whatever, if it's similar to the group of friends that I might go out with, most of them are going to believe in that they'll say, if you ask them what's homeopathy, they'll say, well, it's an herbal medicine or something like that, which is not true.
Exactly.
But is that similar to what the average person would think? They just assume that it's...
absolutely.
Absolutely.
They think that it's a natural herbal remedy, that whatever goes into it is natural and herbal, which is, I suppose, the initial thing you could put in. But they don't really realize that what these substances are supposed to be, the active ingredients, so to speak, what they're supposed to be is to be a toxin, which is supposed to cause certain unpleasant symptoms, and you're diluting it down to a point where they're supposed to counteract those symptoms somehow. But people just don't. I used to be one of these people. We knew things, we believed, we didn't, maybe not necessarily believed in it, but I've always assumed that Ayurveda worked, that homeopathy worked, and not because I thought about it critically or believed in it with all my heart. It's just because I didn't think critically about it.
Yeah. It's the culture you were raised in.
Yeah, the first time I realized that homeopathy was a pseudoscientific alternative medicine was when I saw a short clip of Richard Dawkins talking about it on YouTube. When I was, this was a decade back. So most of my life I have spent thinking that this is probably legit. And then suddenly I see one YouTube video from Richard Dawkins and I was like, wait, something's off. How I thought it worked. And then I saw this video by James Randi, that famous TED Talk where he pops a whole bunch of sleeping pills, homeopathic sleeping pills. So I watched that and I was like, wait, he's saying this too? There's got to be something about it. So I started watching and listening. Then your podcasts came out, and I was like, really, I think I've got to do a little bit more of an investigation to figure out what's going on with homeopathy. And that's when I started sharing that on Facebook, saying, guys, did you know this? Like, I just found out that homeopathy is bullshit. And and the backfire effect that I got was ridiculous. Like, I mean, it was almost religious in its following. I mean, people just felt that I was calling them idiots. And I'm like, no, I'm giving you new information. You should think about it. Don't just, but I mean, these people are fanatical about their alternative medicine. I mean, in India, I know abroad as well, I mean, there are lots of people I've encountered on Twitter who are very fanatical about alternative medicine, homeopathy, and everything else pretty much. So it's an interesting parallel to religion that I found.
Now, why is that? I mean, if you're talking about the microwaves in Japan, so there's a fake story, but whatever. There are some people who think microwaves make your food less healthy.
Yeah,
but they're not fanatical about it. They don't have this kind of religious fervor that you're talking about when people are defending their homeopathy and their Ayurveda. And I always struggle to try and understand, why are people so passionate about this thing that they believe in, but they don't really care about this thing that they believe in. Yeah, they believe it, but it's not that big of a deal.
I have actually been wondering the same thing, and I think, oddly enough, I personally believe that it is because it's almost like we've been indoctrinated in childhood. Like, these are ideas that our parents have handed down to us, that our parents believed in, and that we have just taken for granted that this stuff is fact. Like, on the flip side, I always believed that evolution was a fact, right? Mm-hmm. Because my parents we have books about evolution in the house. We've always discussed it as something which is just a fact. I took it for granted. And I always believed it until I had this conversation with a creationist friend of mine who said that it wasn't fact, that it was BS. And that kind of threw me off. And I started arguing like, no, but I started just telling him things that I had learned and picked up my whole life because I hadn't really taken time to understand it. And it made me wonder why I believed it, if there were people against it. And this was actually the beginning of this was the seed that started my skeptical journey, because it was when an idea I had taken for granted was challenged, and I had to figure out whether it was right or wrong. And even though it was evolution, which turned out to be, yes, it was fact, and it's the creationist idea, which is filled with, which is one big hole. I can't even say filled with holes. But in the same way, people believe that they just take their pet alternative medicines for granted. They still go to the doctor. They still get their regular prescription, but they will always go to the homeopath or the Ayurvedic doctor on the side and get an extra prescription on the side of that. So, but when they get better, the credit always goes to the alternative medicine, of course. Right. That's just the way it is. But I think it's this childhood upbringing of just taking it for granted, and this, I have always believed this, and my parents believe it, and my grandparents believed it, so therefore it must be true, and how dare you say it's not?
Right. Wow. That's a lot of pressure to put on a young person too. When a young person gets hit with something that has been a fundamental part of their upbringing, and all of a sudden they're confronted with information that challenges that. It can be. You can go two ways. It can really sort of rock your worldview and make you start to question things, or you can shut it off completely and say, I'm not even going to listen to that. I know that that's false. I'm not even going to listen to that. And we often see people go in either one of these two ways.
Yeah, I'm so glad I went in the right direction.
We all are.
We've all been there, and we've always had this crossroads. And that's why whenever I'm confronted with whenever I have an idea that something is true through and through, I never totally trust myself to believe it, because I know I have biases. I know I have tendencies to prefer certain types of information than other. And when it came to the keto diet, I'd written an article and a blog about this, a blog and a podcast about this. I used to think that the keto diet was infallible. It was supported by science. It was, it seemed to make logical sense, and nothing could shake me from that position. But every week, at least once, I'd force myself to look for information that contradicted it. And it was in that constant search that I found information that was even more scientifically supported. And that the keto diet isn't crap. It's not useless. It has its place. It has its uses. It is a tool. But a normal balanced diet is probably preferable for most people. So it's, little things like that I have to keep challenging myself on. Like if I think, I look at your politics, right? And I look at Trump and say is he an absolute moron? Or is the media just spinning it that way? And so I every now and then I kind of, if friends or somebody posts something which is contradictory, which says something opposing something that maybe Trump said, which made sense, I consider it. I haven't found any evidence to go against my preliminary observation, but I'd still take that information in. I try to challenge my own way of thinking as much as possible, because up till now, in the last decade of me thinking more critically, I think this has been the most important tool that I've managed to, figure out. And it's the toughest one to get your head around.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And it's, everybody says that they seek out contradicting information, but they don't really. Most people don't. Everyone likes to say that their mind is open to information that doesn't support their belief, but very few people that's true for. So, the fact that you're successfully doing that is, I think, rare. Uh-oh, did we freeze?
I think we cut off for a second. What do you say? What do you say?
I wasn't saying anything. No, I was just saying the fact that you're able to successfully seek out information and genuinely that challenges and contradicts what you believed previously is, I think, a pretty rare talent for someone to have. Something that more people need to do.
Yeah. I think all skeptics should have that, and it happens with every single article I write, because I have to research it from scratch, because I need to have the sources to cite. And every single time, my mind is changed to some degree or the other when it comes to whatever topic I'm writing about.
Well, we're out of time, so I want to really thank you for coming on and spending this time with us this evening. This morning? I don't even know what time of day it is for you. What is it? Middle afternoon, right?
Yeah, it's about 2:25 for me right here.
This whole 13-hour thing all around the world has been a lesson in learning time zones for me.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you.
I managed to figure that out quite well, though, fortunately.
Are you going to be in Las Vegas in a couple of weeks?
Unfortunately, not this year, but hopefully, if I manage to save up something, I'll try and be there next year.
That's a long trip. Okay.
I know, and a very expensive one as well.
Sure. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of years then. But anyway,
Absolutely.
Thanks again, and I really enjoyed this conversation, and we'll talk again soon.
My pleasure, and all the best, and happy birthday to Skeptoid.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. All right. Good night. Good afternoon. Okay, so we're going to wrap up with XXPOC, and I'm just going to say to all of you out there in internet land, thank you so much, because I know you've all sat here through every minute of the 13 hours, and we're only 12 and a half into that, so we're going to get the last bit in right now. Just a reminder, this is our 13th birthday celebration, and we're asking everyone who's ever listened to the Skeptoid Podcast to make a one-time donation of just $13. That's $1 for every year of great content. That's going to go towards supporting our program, supporting our staff, supporting our new projects and new outreach, and bringing this critical thinking information to a larger audience. So thank you again for joining us tonight. And to wrap up, I would like to leave you with the ending section of Principles of Curiosity, our 2017 film, which we can go ahead and roll.